Picture this, right? You are you're walking down a street in a major metropolitan city.
Okay, yeah. Like right in the heart of downtown.
Exactly. And you pass this massive, just architecturally stunning church.
Right, the kind that takes up half the block.
Yeah. And then, I mean, maybe 2 blocks down the road, there's a sprawling, beautiful temple.
Sure, they're everywhere in some neighborhoods.
The entire area is essentially packed with places of worship, right? Teeming with all these devoted believers who gather every single week.
Which is a pretty common sight in a lot of cities today.
It is. And, you would logically think that a community with such a high density of moral instruction would be just radiating peace, stability, and, like, mutual respect.
You would certainly expect a strong correlation there. I mean, if millions of people are actively engaging with institutions dedicated to goodness, that should theoretically yield a highly moral, stable society.
Right. But instead, you turn on the news, and it is just a relentless barrage of complex crimes, intense social hardship, and this really deep systemic frustration.
It's a massive disconnect.
It totally is. And to you, the learner listening right now, that is the central question we are unpacking today. This deeply visible paradox.
The contradiction of our modern era.
Exactly. If there's a church every 2 houses and so many devoted religious believers in a country, why is there still so much crime and social agony?
It's a fantastic question to dig into.
So today we are taking a deep dive into this fascinating, really deeply philosophical lecture that was delivered on March 15th, 2026 in Gwangju, South Korea, to understand exactly why society is failing to fix this.
It really is a profound contradiction to explore, and I should probably note right up front that this speaker makes some incredibly sweeping, radical claims about modern institutions, eventually even labeling them as cartels.
Yeah, that part is definitely intense.
It is, and obviously we are certainly not endorsing this viewpoint, but we are going to fully unpack the underlying logic of the argument here. Because, frankly, the perspective it offers on our modern world is absolutely fascinating.
Oh, for sure.
This isn't just, a surface-level critique of street crime. It is a full-blown systemic diagnosis of modern society.
Okay, let's unpack this, because the way this lecture flips conventional wisdom on its head is just wild to me.
It really does come at the issue from a completely unexpected angle.
Yeah. It starts out analyzing the historical evolution of crime, right? And then it just seamlessly transitions into an absolute deconstruction of the linguistic roots of religion itself.
Well, we can kind of follow the narrative path the speaker lays out for us. First, we need to look at the true evolutionary nature of modern crime.
Right, where it actually comes from today.
Exactly. From there, we will examine the mechanics of how societal leadership has basically failed. And finally, we will arrive at this really radical redefinition of what the word religion actually means.
Which is really the crux of the whole thing.
It is. It's the core of why society is currently struggling so much.
So let's start with that first piece, the evolution of crime. Because the historical contrast presented here is really striking.
The post-World War II comparison.
Yes. Right after World War II, crime was almost purely physical and survival-based. Like, if someone was starving, they stole a loaf of bread.
Right. It was an act of desperation.
Exactly. It was desperation, but the mechanics of it were simple, It was
Right.
easy to understand.
Cause and effect. You're hungry, you steal food.
But today, though, we aren't just dealing with people stealing food to survive. We are dealing with incredibly complex, systemic crimes.
Far beyond just basic survival needs.
Yeah, I mean, we see massive corporate fraud, digital exploitation, deep-seated corruption. It's a whole different level.
The underlying logic here is that the nature of crime evolves alongside the complexity of the society itself.
Okay, so as we get more complex, the crimes get more complex.
Precisely. The shift from stealing bread to, say, embezzling millions happened because the fundamental driving force changed. We moved from trying to fill an empty stomach to trying to fill an unfulfilled psychological void.
Ah, psychological void.
Yeah. The premise rests on the idea that as a society, we lost our broader sense of purpose and started blindly chasing superficial wealth to mask that emptiness.
But, the speaker uses a very specific, almost jarring word to describe modern criminals here. They call them fools, or in Korean, myeongchang-e-dul.
Right, fools.
And I have to admit, I'm getting stuck there. Wait, calling criminal masterminds fools sounds a bit simplistic, doesn't it? Many modern criminals are highly sophisticated.
Oh, absolutely. That is a completely natural reaction.
Like, are we just redefining intelligence to fit a moral argument here?
Well, what's fascinating here is that we are culturally conditioned to equate crime with cunning and operational brilliance.
Right, like the evil genius trope.
Exactly. But the foolishness being discussed here has absolutely nothing to do with IQ or logistical sophistication.
So what kind of foolishness is it?
It is about a profound lack of self-awareness. It's an existential foolishness.
Existential foolishness. How does that actually manifest in the real world, though? Like, what does that look like?
Think about it this way. If a person spends, say, 80 hours a week, brilliantly optimizing a supply chain for illegal drugs,
Okay.
constantly looking over their shoulder, living in a permanent state of paranoia, all just to buy a mega yacht that they never actually have the peace of mind to enjoy.
Oh, wow. Yeah, when you put it like that.
Right. They have completely misunderstood the assignment of human life. They are a genius at logistics, but a fool at living.
A fool at living. That's a great way to phrase it.
They have become entirely disconnected from the natural order and their own life's meaning, twisting themselves sideways for these misplaced desires.
That reframing makes a lot of sense. You can be a genius at the wrong game entirely.
Exactly.
And this leads to a very provocative argument about accountability in the lecture. The speaker argues that crime isn't just an individual failing happening in a vacuum.
No, not at all.
The criminal is actually a mirror.
A mirror reflecting our collective societal pollution.
That's heavy.
It is. A society becomes clean or dirty entirely based on how it is operated by its people and, crucially, its leaders.
So it's top down.
Largely, yes.
Yeah.
Currently, we have a global culture where people have immense power and resources, but because they haven't found their proper places or their true callings, they operate selfishly.
Right.
And when millions of people operate selfishly, immense friction is generated.
The logic essentially states that when we look at a criminal committing an atrocious act, we tend to think, oh, they've gone crazy.
And they have.
Right, they have. But the follow-up question is the crucial one who drove them crazy.
Exactly.
The answer provided is that the intense selfish pressure of the society drove them crazy.
It is a radical shift away from purely individual blame. The speaker goes so far as to describe criminals as children of God who are acting out because nature has assigned them a deeply painful role.
Wait, nature assigned them the role of the criminal?
Yes, as a symptom of the disease. And why are they given this painful role? Because society, and specifically the intellectuals and leaders of that society, failed to put in the effort to guide them.
So the leaders dropped the ball.
Completely. Instead of studying how our culture was becoming polluted by greed, our leaders only chased their own individual success.
So we essentially built a massive societal pressure cooker through our own collective selfishness, and the criminal is just the valve blowing off.
That's a perfect analogy.
If you don't relieve the pressure, the valve is going to blow, which means just hating the criminal doesn't actually solve the structural flaw of the pressure cooker.
Not at all. It just replaces one blown valve with another.
Right. We have to study why the pressure is building in the first place. But if we follow this argument to its natural conclusion, who is supposed to be studying this?
Who holds the map, right?
Yeah, who holds the map? Historically, if society is sick, that job has belonged to our moral institutions, the massive churches and temples we talked about earlier.
Exactly.
So why aren't they fixing it?
That is the exact pivot point of the entire societal diagnosis in this lecture. Society gave these massive organizations incredible power.
Oh, yeah. Tax exemptions, prime real estate, massive platforms.
Right, specifically so they could do large-scale work. Their mandate was supposed to be guiding society and resolving these exact human conflicts.
Okay, here's where it gets really interesting. The argument made is that these huge organizations are failing to fix society because they aren't actually practicing religion.
Which sounds completely contradictory at first.
It does. The speaker claims they are practicing faith. And in this framework, these are treated as two completely different, fundamentally opposing concepts.
They are night and day.
Let me try to visualize this for the learner. It's like treating the universe as a giant cosmic vending machine.
Oh, I like this. Okay.
Faith is when you just insert your prayers and beg for favors. You're thirsty, so you ask the machine for a soda.
And if the machine eats your dollar, faith is just dropping to your knees and begging the machine to give your money back. Or maybe just kicking it a few times in frustration because you don't know how it works.
Yes, exactly. But true religion, according to this framework, is supposed to be a university.
Not a vending machine.
Right. It is opening the vending machine up, studying the gears, understanding the mechanics of how it operates, and fixing the jam so it never steals a dollar from anyone ever again.
That perfectly illustrates the mechanics of the argument. To really ground this, we should look at the etymological breakdown the speaker provides.
Yeah, let's get into the Korean words used here because that blew my mind.
Let's look at the actual words used. Faith and religion. Faith is translated as sineng.
Sinning.
The definition provided for sineng is the act of gathering together out of hardship. When people are weak, struggling, and lack understanding, they gather to beg a higher power for sympathy and assistance.
So it's essentially rooted in pain and weakness.
Exactly. It is a completely passive state of seeking salvation from external pain.
You're just asking for the hurting to stop without asking why it started in the first place.
Now contrast that with the word for religion, which is Jonggyo.
Jonggyo.
Jong uses the character meaning the highest, the root, or the ridge, and Gyo means to teach.
There is a direct contrast made here with the word for a regular school, right? Hakyo.
Yes. Hakyo, a regular school, is an institution where you learn small, everyday knowledge.
Like how to do basic math, how to read, how to perform a trade.
Right. But Jonggyo, true religion, is fundamentally an educational institution of the absolute highest order. It is a place specifically designed to receive teachings of the highest truths.
But what does highest truths or principles of nature actually mean in a practical sense?
That's a great question.
Because when I hear principles of nature, I instantly think of like biology or gravity.
It's a vital distinction to make. They aren't talking about physics or biology. When the speaker references the principles of nature, they mean the fundamental laws of cause and effect in human interaction.
Like a kind of social physics.
Social physics is a great term for it. For instance, if you exploit your employees to maximize your quarterly profits, the immediate effect is you have more money.
Right, short-term gain.
But the principle of nature is the long-term, unavoidable consequence. You destroy trust, you create resentment, and you eventually isolate yourself in a hostile environment of your own making.
You basically engineer your own downfall.
Yes. True religion is supposed to rigorously map out that long-term social physics and teach people how to navigate it so they don't destroy themselves.
Wow. So faith is begging a deity for a better job because you are miserable.
Yes.
Religion is being taught the psychological and social mechanics of why you are miserable and learning how to cultivate internal purpose so you stop making choices that lead to misery.
Precisely. And this leads to a staggering numerical claim about our modern world from the lecture.
The percentages.
The assertion is that currently, humanity is operating at 100% faith and almost 0% true religion.
100 to 0. That is a complete 180-degree misalignment.
Complete inversion.
The logic is that humanity has become incredibly proficient at the gathering part. We build the megachurches, we construct the sprawling temples.
We are great at gathering people in a room.
But we completely fail to make the evolutionary transition. We gathered out of hardship, received some temporary emotional comfort, but we never transitioned into actually studying the principles of life.
We never moved to the next step.
We never graduated from the vending machine to the university.
We are experiencing a massive intellectual blind spot because we use the words faith and religion interchangeably. Organizations brand themselves as religions, but their entire operational mechanism is based on faith.
Because they just tell people to blindly believe, right? To cling, to submit.
Exactly, because the leadership hasn't actually done the rigorous work to understand the social physics of the modern world. They have no practical solutions to teach.
So they just tell their congregations to pray harder.
Pray harder, donate more, wait for salvation.
Which brings us to a very specific and heavily critical look at South Korea's cultural history in the text.
The post-war era.
Yeah. The post-war era in South Korea was defined by this breakneck modernization. They imported global capitalism and technology, and alongside it, they imported the religious frameworks of the entire world.
Christianity, Buddhism, it all flowed into the country very rapidly.
And it was absorbed by its top intellectuals.
But in the rush to modernize and adopt global standards of success, the speaker argues that South Korean intellectuals merely mimicked the aesthetics of these religions.
Aesthetics,
They absorbed the forms and rituals without doing the deep generational philosophical work required to integrate them into a functioning moral compass.
The lecture specifically calls out the habit of bowing.
That's a great section.
It points out that when the international community said to bow to Jesus, the intellectuals just bowed and begged Jesus. When they said bow to Buddha, they bowed and begged Buddha.
They copied the superficial behaviors.
Exactly. But they didn't research the mechanics beneath them. They didn't ask, what actually is the root of this teaching? What are we fundamentally clinging to?
It comes down to the stark difference between the phrases, "I believe" and "I am learning."
Such a huge difference.
The speaker explicitly notes that people in these congregations constantly say, "I believe." But if a true religion, a Jongyo, is a school of the highest order, belief is irrelevant without comprehension.
Right.
You don't walk into a university and declare, "I believe in calculus."
You definitely don't.
You go to a university to learn the underlying principles of calculus so
Yeah.
you can apply them to build a stable bridge.
That distinction really challenges you to evaluate your own mindset, doesn't it? Like, if you're listening to this, are you just accepting the traditions handed down to you blindly, or are you trying to understand the actual mechanics of why they exist?
It forces you to look in the mirror.
It does. And the speaker shares their own radical methodology to illustrate what this educational approach actually looks like in practice.
The way they handle their own students.
Yeah. People approach the speaker knowing they are a spiritual teacher, and they ask the standard questions. Who should I look for here? Should I pray to Jesus? Should I be bowing to Buddha?
And the response they get is incredibly disruptive to the traditional religious reflex.
Oh, totally.
The teacher tells them, "Why are you looking for them? Stop looking for figures to worship."
It totally short-circuits the expectation. Instead of pointing to a deity in the sky, the teacher redirects them inward.
Right back at themselves.
They say, instead of asking a deity for favors, ask fundamental questions. Ask, what is a Buddha? What is Jesus? What is God?
And then taking it a step further.
Yes. Even more importantly, the teacher demands they ask, who are you? Why are you feeling so deeply frustrated with your life right now?
That is the core mechanism of the educational model being advocated here.
Hmm.
True religion isn't about giving you a golden idol to pray to so you feel temporarily soothed.
Like a Band-Aid.
Exactly. It's not a Band-Aid. It's about providing logical, understandable answers to your existential frustrations. The goal is to unravel the knot of your life using the principles of nature so you can actually understand your own behaviors.
And society today is ready for that, right?
Today's society is incredibly educated. We are surrounded by intellectuals. Asking an intellectual to rely on blind faith simply no longer works. They need to understand the why and the how.
The speaker is so adamant about this distinction that they refuse to even use the word religion to describe their own teachings.
Because the word is tainted.
Right, because they know that the moment they use that word, the modern reflex is to immediately drop to your knees and start begging. The word itself has become synonymous with passivity.
If we connect this to the bigger picture, we can see the ultimate thesis regarding our societal collapse.
Bring it all together.
These large organizations, which the speaker bluntly refers to as religious cartels, were granted massive societal power to do massive work.
To research the truth and teach the masses how to live correctly.
Exactly. By failing to transition from passive faith to active education, they are failing their mandate.
Because the supposed teachers aren't teaching the mechanics of how to live, the people remain lost and unfulfilled.
And what do people do when they feel empty?
To fill that void, they chase empty wealth. They become the fools who lack self-awareness, optimizing their lives for all the wrong things.
Yep.
And eventually, the immense pressure of millions of lost, selfish people creates the criminal. The complex crime on our modern streets is the direct downstream symptom of the moral institutions failing to teach the fundamental principles of human interaction.
It is a complete, unbroken chain of cause and effect.
It really is.
It completely redefines the ecosystem of responsibility. Under this framework, a rising crime rate isn't merely a failure of law enforcement.
Not at all.
It is a profound failure of education and philosophy. But, the implication is quite hopeful, actually.
How so?
It suggests that if even a fraction of true educational effort was made, if we shifted our energy from seeking comfort to actually studying the mechanics of our lives, the positive changes in society would be visibly dramatic.
It puts the agency entirely back in our hands.
Exactly.
So let's bring this all together. We started with a highly visible paradox. Churches on every corner, yet crime and suffering everywhere.
The contradiction we walk past every day.
Through the lens of this lecture from Gyeongju, we've traced a fascinating causal chain. We've seen how modern crime is a symptom of our collective selfishness and unfulfilled voids.
Right.
We've seen how criminals act as mirrors, reflecting the failure of our societal leaders to provide a meaningful map for life.
The pressure valve blowing.
Exactly. And most importantly, we've explored how our moral institutions are failing to cure this sickness because they are trapped in passive faith, treating the universe like a vending machine.
rather than stepping up to become active religion.
Right, rather than teaching the highest social physics of how the world actually works.
Understanding the deep functional distinction between begging for salvation and learning the principles of nature changes everything about how we view our societal structures.
So, what does this all mean for you? As the learner, this deep dive is a powerful reminder that true growth never comes from just blindly accepting the structures handed down to you.
No, it takes active effort.
It doesn't come from just bowing because everyone else in the room is bowing. It comes from having the courage to ask why.
To study the gears.
It comes from seeking the underlying mechanics behind how the world works, understanding your specific place in it, and continuously asking the difficult, fundamental questions about who you are and why you do the things you do.
Which leaves us with a rather provocative question to consider on your own.
Oh, I like this one.
If we use this strict definition that true religion is the rigorous study, questioning, and teaching of the natural universe's highest truths and mechanics, does that mean a dedicated scientist or a fiercely curious learner like you might actually be practicing religion far more deeply than someone who simply sits in a pew every Sunday passively waiting for answers?
Now, that is a thought that will stick with you. The next time you walk past that massive church on the corner, you might just look at it and the society functioning around it a little bit differently. Thank you for joining us on this deep dive. Keep questioning the world around you, keep looking for the mechanical root of things, and keep learning. We'll catch you on the next one.